everybody get the job descriptions? Okay, so I brought these. These are two jobs that we're hiring for currently. Apologies for the noise. In the spirit of talking about sort of how you get into the workforce and what you can do with the sort of experience that I've had, but also what the types of skill sets that we're looking for. So maybe I'll talk for a bit, and then if people have questions specifically on some of the responsibilities that are on there, we can chat about this, about that for a bit. I'm hoping to keep this informal as well. I can't even tell you when I was here. I don't remember the years. I have copies of Excalibur. We used to bind them for the annual editions. You still do? Okay, so I think it was 97 is burned into my mind, and then here for a number of years. Starting off volunteering, writing for the paper, and then getting into some of the editor roles, editor-in-chief for 1 or 2 years before leaving York and getting into the professional world. When I came to university, I hadn't even really thought of media as one of the jobs that I wanted to do, which is part of the reason I hadn't applied to journalism school. It just hadn't really entered into my mind that this was something I wanted to do. And I'd been a student here for a few years, and I was reading the paper one day, and I thought, I can do this. And I think I can do it pretty well, too. And so I went into the office, very intimidated, very shy, because it was bustling, as usual. And it wasn't during one of the volunteer days, and I'm so glad that those are on because it makes it a little bit more inviting. But I walked in, and I spoke to whoever was there at the time. I said, I want to write. And I think they were low on volunteers at the time, so they assigned me to go cover. The president at the time was Mann. Is that possible? Yeah. So it was something, I don't remember what the story was, but I interviewed her, some controversy. And then I was sent off. I decided, the editor wanted me to talk to the chair of the board, possibly, who was someone at the Toronto Star. And so my second interview for this piece, I'm down at the Toronto Star office in the publisher's room, incredibly intimidated as well, having this interview, the second time I've ever drawn up a list of questions for a subject. All that's kind of a blur, but I think it went pretty well my interview subject, the chair of the board was, I forget I'm going to go back and read that story. Was nice in terms of the end of the interview and said, you did a pretty good job. I explained that this was my second interview ever for a newspaper. And so he was very kind and generous. But I wrote up the story, and I was an English major and creative writing student as well. And the story didn't get edited very much, so I was very excited about that. And I thought, okay, great. This means I can write, and I can do this as well. And that basically kicked off my interest in journalism and storytelling and wanting to go out there and collect information and share that with with readers, which is still sort of what drives what I'm interested in today. Even though I'm not in a writing role, it's still, I'm very interested in building out sort of the best user experience and the best media experience for our audience, and how can we make it better than our competitors, for instance. But it all kind of began with Excalibur. And yeah, I mean, it also was a lesson for me, kind of in hindsight, that you don't know where your career path, you don't know what's going to set you on that path. And it turned out that it was an extracurricular activity that shaped my education here at York and where I would move on to next. And what served me most in the years, in all the time I've spent, so through my years at Maclean's and now at Yahoo as well, is just an entrepreneurial spirit. Because the thing that I learned at Excalibur was you just had to do it all on your own. And by on my own, I mean with the team of people who are there, but it wasn't a professional group of people at that time, and it's not like walking into your first workplace and you have managers who are telling you how the way the business works. We were very much shaping what the news agenda was going to be, the stories we're going to cover. We were very much shaping the product. We had a lot of control over what the media product looked like. The website was, I think we launched the website in the time that I was there, and I was telling you that at the time I couldn't even understand why people would go on the web to read what was in the newspaper, because it was just starting. And then a few years later, I end up at Maclean's, and I'm running their website because I learned very quickly through my experience here and through a few other experiences I'll talk about that was essentially where things were moving. But it was just sort of like a thirst for knowledge, keep an eye on the time, unafraid to take calculated risks. We're not afraid to do things differently, because in some ways we realized that the paper could be whatever we wanted it to be. We were students here, and we were being influenced. Other students were coming in, and everyone had a voice, and so everyone's voice helped to shape what the product was, but we could kind of push it and turn it into whatever it is that we wanted it to be. And that was very empowering and very exciting. And it's also what kind of nudged me in the direction, eventually a way of wanting to be a writer all the time, but rather into more of an editor role and into what is now effectively a manager role, because I'm very interested in the shaping of the product. And what moved me from Excalibur, where I went after Excalibur, was to Maclean's magazine. I applied for an internship there in the fact-checking department. And I was telling the class earlier, before this, I don't even know if they have a fact-checking department anymore, because there have been so many changes and so many cuts at print publications that there are some departments that are completely eviscerated, and those functions don't exist anymore. But that's essentially where I got my start. I applied for an internship there. I worked for a summer in their fact-checking department, got to know everybody, and was exposed to a whole new set of job functions that I didn't even know existed. I knew what we did at Excalibur, but because I hadn't gone to journalism school, I didn't realize some of the other roles. So fact-checking, for instance, I knew what it was about, but I didn't realize that there was a role for it exclusively. There were people, you have your writers, but then it's like an iceberg, right? So the names you see in the paper are just the tip of everyone required to put together the entire product. And that's not only editors and photographers, but there are production coordinators who make sure that the entire operation works smoothly. They're the ones who they're just kind of keeping track of what needs to be delivered and what times to make sure that the magazine goes out. So are the stories they're not touching the copy, they're just kind of bringing together the art department, the photo department, the production department, and the editorial department together to get that product out the door. And that's true in digital as well. Like, there are a number of job categories that are new and emerging that are not just writing and not just taking photos. So I spent 6 years at Maclean's, where so after the internship, I got hired on full-time as their web editor. And that was at a time when all we were doing with the magazine when I started, they were just dumping the full weekly edition onto the web. And the first thing that we did was we made some changes. So over the time, we wanted to go from a weekly site to a daily site. So we made a number of changes to basically create sort of a daily habit among Maclean's readers. We introduced features like blogs. Paul Wells was the first blogger on the Maclean site, and he realized the potential of, he also likes to write. Like, that guy likes to be out in front of people, which is fantastic. I realized really quickly at Maclean's to go and find the people who wanted to play in this space and were as excited about playing in digital as I was and trying new things. It was still very much Wild West at the time. There were no real rules, so we could try things, and everything was new. Nobody was really, the only thing that stopped us were resources, so dollars to do the things that we wanted to do. But aside from that, everybody was really encouraging to try out new things. So we introduced some basic things you see today, like polls, comments from readers, photo galleries. Those things, they didn't exist at the time. So it was, and the idea of photos, I mean, if you think about everyone who was doing digital, for the most part, had been doing print. So in their mind, in the print world, you have one photo. You don't have a collection of photos. So it was alien to them, this idea of creating a series of photos that told a story. Now, the photo department was encouraging and they liked it, but no one had really brought this idea to them. And it was happening on the web. So I'm not the one who introduced it to them, but it was just at the time when websites were realizing that they could do these things. And it's just sort of an example of how things have changed so much over such a quick period of time that you have, video on websites was brand new at the time. The first video series we launched on the site was around the Toronto Film Festival. And there was someone who worked in the photo department who was interested in trying out video. And that's the thing, I went out and sought out anybody who was willing to do different and new things on the website. And we did a project called 30 Short Films about the Toronto Film Festival. And we came up with 30 story ideas or more, and he kind of went out and shot them over the course of the festival. He would find either they were, Midnight Madness. Who were the people who went to Midnight Madness, for instance? There were sort of the autograph hounds. He ended up finding a couple of people that, the recurring stars, let's call them, in some of our videos, because they showed up a few different times, because they were in a few different stories. But it was that was just very new. It was a form of storytelling that we weren't really doing previously. But the magazine was encouraging us to do it because the magazine was all about storytelling. It's just that they were used to doing it in text. And they were used to doing it in some photos because they did have some really nice photo spreads as well. And our lead photographer at the time, Peter Bragg, was super encouraging. I mean, every time I had an assignment idea, he would either send out someone on the team to go do it, or he would do it himself, and he's a fantastic photographer, or he would bring projects to us. There was more opportunity to showcase some of his work on the website than there was root pages to be able to print some of those photos in the magazine. So he was very encouraging and excited to work with us on that. And right around that time, for the magazine and for the website, I was writing about, I did a number of things. I mean, I used to do video game reviews when the first Xbox came out. It was mind-blowing because I loved video games, and here suddenly I had access to all the games and all the platforms that were just coming out at the time. But we're writing a little bit about the internet. We weren't really covering it in depth, but I was following it quite a bit. And it just seemed to me that what was happening with these internet companies was very much like what happened in the mid-20th century with television, in that it was a new emerging medium. There weren't that many rules. There were some players who had kicked off at the beginning of the tech boom, and we were just starting to see the shakeout. So, if you think about the companies there at the beginning, so there's Yahoo at the beginning, there was Excite, there was Lycos, there's AOL. I'm sure there's a few others I can't think of right now. And after the bubble burst, there was kind of a shakeout, and a few of them remained. So Yahoo's one of the companies that remained. AOL is one that remained, but a few of the other companies basically closed up shop. So it seemed to me that it was very much like what had happened, or as close as possible to the emergence of the television industry in the 20th century and the mid 20th century. And how often do you get would someone get to be inside? So I decided, you know what, instead of watching this, I want to go in and work inside it, because it's a chance of a lifetime. Like, when else are you going to be able to watch all this stuff happening from the inside and see how companies make decisions on where they go next and how they're going to succeed? And I can tell you that in the time I've been at Yahoo, there's been so much change that it's paid off quite a bit. I mean, I've learned quite a bit in terms of how companies make decisions, and I've learned a lot about the internet, and which I'll get to in a minute. But it just seemed like a really good opportunity. Little did I know at the time how quickly nobody knew how much the web would develop, so that you would have sort of, I mean, everything is still digital, but if you think about everything that's happened in just 12 years with the web, from the emergence of YouTube and Facebook and Ustream and Twitter and Storify and Scribble, like, it's almost like the medium is being redefined every 12 months, it feels like, from our perspective. You almost can't keep up with everything that's happening. So a big company like Yahoo, it's interesting and challenging to try to continue to operate when you have all these companies emerging and you don't know which one's going to stick. And, you know, Instagram shows up and competes with Flickr, and Pinterest is here today, and Pinterest already has a competitor, which I find like fascinating. I forget what the name of the competitor is, but I feel like in some ways it's like Maggie Simpson's nemesis. What's that kid's name? Like, these are just little babies and they're competing with one another, right? So I made the move to Yahoo when the opportunity arose. The company was just reinvesting in Canada. They had launched the site in the late 90s, around the time that the .com site had launched as well, and then during the bust had basically closed up shop, and all that was left, they left a storefront here, a small sales team to sell ads, and there was a hot jobs team as well, when Yahoo owned Hot Jobs, which was one of the main career sites from the late 90s, which I don't even know if it exists anymore, but we sold that business a few years ago. And there was recognition, there was an investment that made by the company to rebuild Yahoo Canada, and they started hiring staff. We started hiring staff. So in launching products, and when I say launching products, I mean like launching a news site, launching a sports site, a finance site, all Canadian. Because before, if you went to Yahoo Canada, it would just direct you off to the US site. And now what we were doing is launching local instances of this here. And now our office is about 100 people, just in Toronto. And that's made up of about 30 plus editors. We have around 30 salespeople, and the rest of the other third of the staff are functions like business development, and our finance team, and marketing is here in the market. And then some support functions like our legal team are here, for instance. So we're about 100 people now, and we don't build the products here. So we don't have in the 6 years I've been here, we went through this whole development where we used to have local, we call them engineers, but developers in market who were building out the sites. And Carol Bartz, one of the 6 CEOs that I've worked under in 6 years at one company, made a decision to change the way they developed. So those job functions went away here in the market, and they created development centers around the world. So our products, our sites are built in teams around the world, and we reinvested in Canada in editorial, essentially. And we built up our editorial team to create the most compelling user experience possible. And to go back a few steps, the reason I made the move to Yahoo was I was very interested in the internet industry, but also content experiences and getting involved in an enterprise. Like, I was very interested in audience feedback loops. So where you would, at the time, there was just starting a debate between the gatekeeper role that traditional media had, and sort of the breakdown of that gatekeeper role, where audiences were starting to want to participate in the news production process. And I felt that that was really the direction that media was going to go, and it felt to me that it was also a more responsible and more responsive approach to media. And in some ways, it's really just a throwback in my mind, which could just be like a romantic notion, but it's a throwback to how media kind of was when it first started, which is communicating information to people, but also letting people have input into it, and people are kind of helping inform what it is that the news agenda, what it is that they're letting you know what they care about, and you're taking action to respond to that and deliver information that they're looking for. So I felt that, with Yahoo opening up business here in Canada, or growing the business, it was a good opportunity to get in there. Plus they had some cool products, like they had a Flickr product, and they were doing more around user-generated comments and some of the other, we had other than traditional media were. The traditional media was just kind of behind, and traditional media still weren't at the point where they were funding digital to the degree that we could kind of make a difference. And I kind of wanted to get somewhere where the focus was 100% on digital. And so suddenly, my daily and weekly conversations with my peers around digital went from, why are we doing digital? Like, why are we putting these stories online? Why are we spending so much resources? Why are we hiring people to do web? To a conversation about how. Like, how can we do this best? What's next? Who do we need to watch out for? Who's doing some interesting new things? What can we learn from them? So when the focus was 100% on digital, it just changed the conversation, and it made it more creative and more not entertaining, but it was creatively fueling, right? So so that was part of the rationale for why I kind of made that jump. And it paid off in the sense that you see kind of where we are now, and you see how people are consuming content, and it's really fun to be in that space. The one thing that I've learned and seen over the time is the types of jobs that we're hiring for and the types of jobs that have emerged. So as an emerging category, there are all sorts of new job functions that have popped up, and it just reminded me very much of my experience at Maclean's, walking in the door the first time and meeting all these people who are doing interesting jobs that I didn't even know existed before. And there are these job functions that exist in our industry that people are not aware of necessarily. So in your hands, for instance, I mentioned just video programmer as an example, because that's something that's brand new, that's coming to a lot of different media sites. But there are people who do the equivalent of production coordinator jobs, right? Who are what we call product managers, and their job, for instance, is to take the needs of the editorial staff and understand their language and speak the language of the developers and coordinate all that so that the developers are building the tools that editors need to do their jobs. And it helps to have a little bit of a tech background, but I've also discovered that that's not even the most critical part of that function. It's someone who can communicate really well. It's someone who does critical thinking, who knows how to identify the needs of the end users, for instance, and outline those and prioritize those and communicate that between the teams. And then also, if developers can't do certain things, to explain in language that editors understand why certain things can't happen. So I bring that up because especially in a journalism school context, there are people who go into, and I'm not sure about communication studies, but there are people who go into journalism school thinking that they want to write. And there's always that drop-off through the years, right? People leave the program after time because they realize it's not the sort of thing that they want. And then maybe they don't even go back into media. But there are these job functions that exist where if you're interested in media, but you don't want to write and you don't want to edit, these jobs exist. We rely a lot on metrics, for instance. So if you're thinking about getting into media and you're thinking about doing digital, do not shy away from math, because we ask all of our students to look at, it's not like calculus, but it's, basic looking at tables and spreadsheets to understand what does our traffic look like? How many people visited our site today? When are people visiting our site? What are they looking at when they're visiting our site? Our front page programmers, so the homepage team, the ones who package all the content, we call it packaging, on the front page. So they select the story that goes up there, they select the artwork that's going to go along with it, they select related links. They're looking at a tool every hour, sometimes every minute. Well, a minute's a little bit much, but I mean, they are looking at it in minute increments to see how content is performing, and they'll make editorial decisions based on how it's on how that tool is reporting. So sometimes it's move that story out, put a different story in because no one's responding to it, to maybe it's here's an important story, but people aren't paying attention to it the way that we need them to. So let's just tweak the headline a little bit to make it, to tell them a different part of that same story that might be more compelling than the way we presented it already. Or it's a big story, they're not responding to it. Let's find another angle to this story that might be on our network that they might be interested in. To successful, like this piece of content is doing really well. Today we were having this very conversation about the elections. We were ready to start taking down most of our election coverage around noon, just because we figured people are starting to get tired of it, right? But we look at that stuff all day long. So our perception of people's interest gets skewed because we're looking at it all the time. So we get bored. So when we get bored, we figure other people are getting bored. And that's where the tool is really useful, because we realize, some people are still just getting to work. So they're only just starting to get caught up on it. So what it told us today was, keep this story up longer. People are still paying attention to it. And it's not just our own internal tools, but we go on to we have other signals that we use, web-based signals that tell us whether or not people are interested in something. So we see what people are talking about in social, and we see what people are searching for, and we see how people are interacting on other sites. And that helps to make a decision in terms of when we take a story down, how long we keep it up. So that's just sort of critical thinking, right? Being able to look at different data points, bring it together, synthesize it in a way that is meaningful, and then you can kind of make an editorial decision based on all those different pieces of information. So back to packaging, we look for people who do basically smart curation. So what I like to drive home to our editors all the time, who like to complain, or not complain, but they say, oh, why doesn't this story have a photo? Or why doesn't the video show up on the story page? I like to remind them that when we get content, so part of it is content that so if it's a photo, we go to a photo service and grab a photo of Obama, for instance. Our writer has written a piece. Our video team has produced a piece. Our editors, their job, these are all puzzle pieces, and our editors, their job is to put it together. So they have to look at the whole page, the content experience, and decide, is this the best content experience? What's the best way to tell this story? Should we lead with a video, or should we lead with a photo? Should this story have some tweets in it? Should we embed it, enhance it with something, what people are saying out on the web about this story? Should we do something with the comments that people are posting to this story, for instance? Should we do a follow-up story? Should we write a story about the comments? These are all just kind of curation skill set where we look for people who have that sort of, you need a little bit of a nose for news. Like, you need to know what a good story is. You need to know what a good piece of content is, and you need to kind of learn how to put it all together in a compelling manner to build sort of the best user experience. Because that then translates into what, we look at. We set goals for people. We set objectives. We say, we want you to, we want to showcase more video. And so our staff are expected to go out there and find more video content that's coming through our providers that we're generating, and position that and put it in presented in a way that's compelling to audiences so that they'll want to consume it, for instance. Production fact checkers. Oh yeah, and I was going to say, so back to the entrepreneurial spirit and back to stats. An example of a way that you can kind of develop some of this skill set, even on your own, is, start a blog and then look at your traffic. And I've talked to some students before, and I see the resumes come through, and the students who are really interested in it, like the people who kind of rise to the top of our pile, are people who kind of just take that initiative and figure out, based on the tools that are available to them today, right, to just build out a content experience, and you can do the exact same things that we do in our work every day with free tools. Because I have my own blog, and I just experiment with it. I check the stats all the time. I see how people are coming through. I kind of tailor the content accordingly. I tweet stuff out. That is like my own personal thing, because I like to test things on a very small scale as opposed to a huge scale on Yahoo, where it takes more effort to discover things, to come up with a test and then test it out and then eke out the learnings from it. You can do it on a very small scale, and I do it every day and every week just on my own. But all those tools are available to you. And I think that about covers, let's go to questions. Yeah. Questions? Do you have, yes?
Is there a conflict between your day job at Yahoo and doing your own blog on a smaller scale? Is there a tension between things you might do there that your Yahoo parent might say, why are you saying that? People might think that's the opinion of Yahoo.
No, because people don't know what it is that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's a hobby. It's like in a hobby category. It's not in a news category. Yeah, like I have 2 Twitter feeds.
Right.
I have one that's my name, and then I have another one that's the name of my blog, but it's completely innocuous. Like you could, it's the least controversial thing you could think of.
Maybe write down your blog.
Oh, I don't know if you want to see my blog. I don't know if
No? We'll find it.
you can. Yeah, it's about comic books. So you'd have to. Yeah, if you're interested in comic books, I'm happy to give you the blog. Yeah.
And speaking about the experience that you need for jobs like this, well, for example, like I'm a mature student that, back in 2000 I started my first website.
Yeah.
And I've taught myself for the past 10 years, like talking about people who rise to the top of your pile, do you necessarily have to have completed your degree to enter into certain positions, or like do you, like, how does that work?
So I guess the short answer is probably no, but I would say that when we're looking at people's resumes, the people who have completed the degrees are the ones that we're not favoring, because I'm trying to set up opportunities for people to come and work at Yahoo who have not completed their degrees, specifically an internship type setting, which we don't really have right now, but we kind of introduced it last year a little bit when we were hiring some support staff for the Olympics. I specifically went out and requested students, that we look for students, because I wanted to give people who were still learning, like in an education setting, an opportunity to see how our operation worked, because we were finding so many people were coming through, and unless they'd worked at a tech company, they didn't really understand what it was that we were looking for. And so you get a lot of people coming through the door, they don't know if it's what they like, and if you're hiring for a full-time job, you're probably less likely to want someone who's just trying to feel out whether or not they like it. But I think it's our responsibility of us as sort of to help build up the IQ of the industry, of talent in the industry, and fostering talent, to try to create settings where we can help bring people in for short periods of time so they can understand what it is that we do, and then they can leave and they can decide, yeah, this is what I like, or no, it's not what I want to do. And then just kind of spread the word as well to let other people know what it is, the type of thing that we do, because I've been in it for so long, I forget how radically different it is from traditional media, for instance, that people have to remind me like that it is very different from other people's experiences in mainstream media companies. So we don't have, and then the second part is we don't have that program set up yet. I'm in the process of making an ask that we have some funds to fund a program like that for next year. And last year we funded it from May till end of August, so basically the summer months. It worked out well that there was the Olympics because I had a very good excuse to go out and find those people. Yes?
What do you see your next steps being?
Very good question.
Do you plan on staying editor-in-chief for a little while longer, or do you plan on moving up?
That's a good
Can
question.
you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. So next steps, what would I do next? So before I answer that question, I'm going to, something I didn't mention in the last class I think is interesting, but but for you guys, and this is job function, but a theme that's shaping digital media right now, I find, is that the tech companies are the ones that are shaping storytelling more than the media companies. Because if you think about Twitter, and if you think about Storify, and if you think about Scribble, for instance, which is a chat platform which was created by a couple of guys who left CTV, these little tech startups are the ones that are they're either staffed by former media people or by data scientists or tech heads essentially that are developing these platforms upon which that we're communicating with one another. And these types of technologies are the ones that are shaping, and what media are doing is they're popularizing these platforms. I was talking to someone who used to work in Toronto at Toronto Life, St. Joseph Media for Toronto Life, and has gone to New York. And he was telling me he's been talking to a bunch of different media companies, like big ones too, like Condé Nast and a few of the other big ones. And he said that he found it interesting because in Canada, we always think that the US are so much further ahead than we are. But he said that from a print perspective, those, especially magazines, are really struggling right now in terms of what they do from a digital perspective. And he said that the most innovative work, like when they want to do something new and fresh, they farm it out. They go out to companies, small developers, startups, people working on apps. They don't develop it in-house. They develop it through this network of small, very nimble tech companies. As tech companies and media companies start to merge, like the line between the two of them is blurred, where the technology is just the platform for the content and the communication delivery. That's why you're seeing more of these tech companies start to have an influence over how media and storytelling is shaped. There are opportunities for people in those companies who are interested in media, but might not want to do like what I talked, like might not want to write or edit or do something traditional, but want to work in basically what's a growth part of the industry. Companies that are very dynamic, that are changing all the time. If it's a good company that's getting a lot of investment, then they're kind of on the rise and they're growing. And it's always exciting to be part of that. They're the ones where sort of the most innovative work is happening, in my opinion. So once I've completed what I want to learn from Yahoo, that's one of the areas that might be interesting to go and take everything that I've learned at Yahoo in terms of building compelling audience experiences, everything I've learned from what we've done in terms of building a media product. So we've gone from being an aggregator to an originator of content. So we used to buy, when I started there, we exclusively obtained feeds of content from partners we call them, right? So Canadian Press and CBC and Forbes and Magazine and a number of others. And we are now moving to a place where we want to be a reputable, recognized, authoritative media company. And we've made investments in original content. So We've launched a number of blogs, and I say blog, but I mean, we've launched a number of, we've hired, we've gone out and found people who are writing, contributors, and producing video and producing other types of content to contribute exclusively for Yahoo. And we're kind of building a media company in many ways, like we're building a media experience from scratch. Whereas if you go to work for the Toronto Star, they've got 120 years of legacy behind them, and it's a very different experience because they have all that legacy to work through as they transition into digital. That Yahoo's kind of the opposite. They were exclusively a tech company, and now it's trying to kind of like turn a little bit and become a bigger media player, for instance. And I mean, it's working because the Olympics, I was saying in the last class, Yahoo was globally the #1 destination for Olympic content around the world. In the US, they beat out NBC's coverage. So the Yahoo.com Olympic coverage was way, way bigger than NBC, like miles ahead in terms of performance. And how we measure performance is through a tool, a third-party system like the Nielsen for the web, Nielsen television ratings, right? So it's but for the web called ComScore, where you can measure like how many people came to your site, how much time they spent, how much they consumed, page views, for instance. Yahoo Canada Sports was the #1 sports site in July and August, ahead of CTV Olympics. So it's I forget where I was going with that, but it was just that it's trying to being a media company and being successful at it, using metrics, for instance, to inform where we go, what we decide we're going to cover, what parts of the, where there are opportunities for us to go and create content of our own that the partners don't necessarily have. So it's kind of taking that and kind of finding other opportunities where you can take those learnings. I take a very kind of practical approach to kind of my job, I guess, my role, but all these skills, like what can you do with these? How can you apply them in different contexts? So I'm constantly looking at, what I'm learning every single day on the job, because it doesn't really just end with you're in there, you're working, and that's it. I'm constantly analyzing, like, what else can I learn? Where else are there opportunities? Especially, where are there gaps? So part of the reason that we went, and the most exciting thing for me in terms of Yahoo as an opportunity for original content, I find that there's a gap in the media coverage, in the conversation, let's call it, between spot news, which I see all the time, and column and opinion, this kind of middle ground where you're trying to just move that story forward and develop it a little bit further, and you're taking in people's comments, and you're tying in different threads together, and you see 3 stories out there, and you kind of just bring the threads of those 3 stories together into one and move that advancing the story, essentially, is what we're calling it. Our sports writer, Puck Daddy, that Puck Daddy blog, he does it really, really well. Like, to us, he is like the perfect example of what it is that someone who's producing content should be doing. And that's why I say we launch blogs, because it's not just a bunch of one-off articles. We're trying to build out sort of a brand around an easy kind of fun example is we've launched a science and weather blog called Geequinox, and the idea is that we want to build out a different way of covering science and weather than you're seeing elsewhere on the web. Yeah.
How successful has the Yahoo original been to drawing web viewers to Yahoo for original content? Or like for the video section, do you guys usually go towards just finding popular videos off other websites and then just bringing them onto your website? Or?
It's a bit of a combination of both. And the reason Originals has been successful, I will say. And part of the reason that it's successful is that there's a dearth of good web video, like compelling web video. There's a bunch of fun UGC stuff, but it's kind of one-off, right? To be able to consistently deliver an engaging audience experience in web video, there aren't that many people doing it, and that's why if you're thinking of getting into digital space, like video production is a growth area, big time, and everyone's looking for it, right? I mean, last night we were watching part of the election coverage on the Wall Street Journal app. It's like their video stream. Like that's where I was watching right at the end before I decided to go to bed. After watching a bunch of the networks and television, it was Wall Street Journal. They do like a really cool video app. And it's just everybody's getting into it. And there's real opportunity for people to go in and create compelling content. Because we're looking for it. I know our competitors are looking for it. Nobody can find it, you know. And so part of the solution to that for us from a business is to go out and create our own. So we've created, for instance, we've created a brand new video series that launched last week called Pulse of Canada, which is just streeters. So we're asking a question, then we're packaging sort of content around that. We're set to launch a couple of other shows. These are just Canada shows. But also we leverage a lot of the US programs. But that comedy series, Burning Love, which was a spoof of like The Bachelor, was hugely popular. But it was done we worked with a comedy troupe, Ben Stiller's comedy troupe, like his comedy company. We worked with them to put it together. So we're dabbling a little bit in drama. We have a Cybergeddon, which is a tech thriller type series that was created by one of the creators of CSI. And then Tom Hanks did his web series. I'm embarrassed, I can't remember the name of it. That launched, Electric City, premiered. He went to a number of different companies and then decided to partner with us because, for a number of reasons, but where he premiered his kind of web series, this animated web series that he wrote and produced and starred in. And, you know, we have some of the most popular produced web series on the internet. So we do like another show, OMG Now, which is like our Celebrity Minute program that we do daily, the Sports Minute. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Who are like your main competitors within Canada?
Yeah. So we look at it from. Sorry, I'm just going to pull out the list because it's for our ComScore list. But we compete with in a number of different ways. So we look at ComScore on a monthly basis in different categories that we compete in. So right now, if you look at top sites, 16 million people visited Yahoo Canada in September. We were the 4th most popular site, and so we were Google, Microsoft, MSN, Facebook, and then we're number 4. And then we're ahead of Wikimedia. Wikimedia was number 5. But in the sports realm, for instance, in September we beat out TSN, ESPN. In news, we compete with CBC, Huffington Post, Canoe. In the other categories, in finance, we compete with ROB. We're the number 1 finance site in Canada. We compete with Report on Business, with Financial Post. It's either Reuters or Bloomberg, one of the business sites. I'm just trying to remember. And then the others, I can't remember who the competitors are per category. Oh, movies, it's Cineplex Media is one we compete with. So we're number 1 in finance, number 2 in sports. These are just the September numbers. Number 2 in celebrity entertainment with our OMG site. Number 3 in movies. Number 3 in news, number 4 overall.
Okay.
Yes?
You said that journalism school you would go to, but do you think it's important? Because I read an article in the paper and said that it's not as important as it used to be. Just wanted to know that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's like I have a personal opinion on it, and then there's probably a professional one, but if you can develop the skill sets that journalists need, or the people working in digital media need, and you can demonstrate that, that's almost as important. And in some cases, it might be more important, because some people may come to us with a journalism degree, and we will look at those people, and look at their resumes, but when they come in to talk to us, they don't really have, it's clear that they don't have the skills that we need. But if you're putting together your resume, you need to be able to demonstrate that you are able to, touch on the responsibilities and demonstrate that you can deliver on those, you can meet those in whatever sorts of ways that you can, right? And so that's why I'd say like a journalism degree is not critical, but we also look for, people with a new media like experience. Does that make sense?
For the jobs it says journalism, so if we don't have that, can we still apply?
Yeah, you can apply.
Should we still take the risk and just apply?
Yes.
It would give us consideration.
Yeah, I mean, we would look at the resume, right? I mean, in some ways, you want to communicate to people, this is the type of person that we're looking for. And so we want to ensure that the people understand what the sort of the skill set is that we're looking for. But if you have work experience, however, but you don't have that specific degree, but you have other sort of education around all the things I talked about before, especially around critical thinking and be able to address some of the key needs that we have, then we'll look at it. But you just need to be able to communicate that in your resume. Yes?
What program did you take at York?
Yeah, so I graduated from English and from the arts program because of BA in English and social cultural anthropology. So I didn't take the archaeology, that one class in archaeology that was offered. I believe when I started, I think I entered the creative writing program. And I had applied to film, but I had missed the deadline. So I came here anyway, putting together my package for the next year, and then decided, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to kind of go down this other path. Yeah.
Given the fact that Yahoo's really successful when it comes to sports, I'm just curious as to what the Yahoo sports team does when they're faced with situations that are beyond their control, such as the NHL lockout, and how they work around that in terms of traffic.
So it's interesting because the traffic, we've done a couple of things. We sent Nick, our columnist, we sent him to Russia to go write about the KHL. And it's proven to be really successful because he's gotten picked up in loads of media for his coverage of the KHL. And what's Nick, in terms of building out sort of hiring a columnist and getting sports contributors, like it's difficult to find stories. You just have to be really creative. That said, Nick, this year, more people are reading him now than they were this time last year when there wasn't a lockout. So he's proven to become an authoritative source. He's trying to be creative in terms of finding story ideas, and then people are coming to us to read whatever it is that he's writing about. But it is a struggle because there's nothing to write about, so you have to kind of find new things. But I mean, the thing is right now, where are the players? They're playing the KHL. So let's go to the KHL and write the stories about, go to where the players are, essentially. And then, write about the struggles of them being on strike and how do their families feel about it. Yes?
I have a more personal question. What's it like to work on the internet where there's news 24 hours? Like I would picture the editor-in-chief of Yahoo Canada on his phone like that and just sitting here talking to us.
I have a really good team of people. And I have a really good team of people, and we staff the site based on traffic patterns. So we're not, there are dark hours, for instance, but that's where it's interesting to be part of Yahoo because as far as I can tell, Yahoo's the only truly global media company because we have editorial desks all around the world, and there are people in, not just a bureau, not like one person in London, but there's a Singapore team, for instance, that will alert us to breaking news that's happening while we're sleeping. So we have this sort of network where we work with all of the different Yahoo companies, the sites, the local sites around the world. So I have, for instance, regular meetings with Maktoub, who are in Egypt. I have in London, and we have a meeting once a year where all the editors, the lead editors, get together. I work very closely with the US, which is another really interesting part about working for a global company. Because people often ask me, what's it like working for like an American company? But it's not really an American company, it's a global company. It's one of the few that I can think of that work in media. And it's great. I mean, it's an opportunity that if you're working, I don't know, probably at the CBC or Toronto Star, you might not have that opportunity to have those connections with people. But yeah, no, I'm not checking. I am checking my BlackBerry all the time, but it's not always for breaking news. Sometimes my manager wants things. Yes?
Yeah, I was kind of curious about this notion of web space versus what you were just talking about right now. Because I was interested at the very beginning when you said, okay, Yahoo decided to invest in a company in Canada, and obviously, as you just pointed out, throughout the world. So what's the relationship, do you think, between those two, right? Because there was certainly a conception at one point, which seems to not be the case as you're talking about the sort of material editor, if I can put it that way, of the company itself, where the web space would be global, you could run it from anywhere as well. But it seems like what you're saying actually is that companies like this have to build local presence with people and bodies in particular places.
Yeah.
Is there something about local character that has to be captured by people on the ground in those places?
Yeah, I mean, the most recent example is yesterday with the US election. The way that we use, so one of the good parts about being a global company is we are able to leverage some of the content that's being developed globally, but it's not always relevant to our audience. So not only writing a story, so it's not only just covering what's the Prime Minister say about the US election, but sometimes the coverage is just so navel-gazing. I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's so American that a Canadian reading it, just in the choice of words, for instance, you need to be able to kind of step away. And it happens sometimes, we've covered, we need editors to be able to make the choices for the stories. And the reason I say that, another example was, I guess it was with the Quebec election. There are stories that come through partners, like wire feeds, but they're written for a global audience. So it says, the results of the Quebec election, Pauline Marois has been elected, the premier of Quebec, a primarily francophone province in Canada. Like the minute you read that, you realize, well, that's not written for me. And you need people to, it's subtleties like that you need to have people on the ground in the local market to be able to recognize, so that they're creating an experience for the local audience. But the most, not glaring, but I worked really heavily on the Olympics, for instance, and I coordinated our efforts based here in Toronto, and we had access to, we had 25 plus accredited journalists in London, which made us, outside of the official broadcasters and even competing with some, in the top 3, if not the most accredited media agency at the London Games. And that's not including all the support staff that we had to send as well to be able to do coverage from London. But the way that the US teams were writing the copy, even though it was, here's the result of event X, it was really written for an American audience. And the Olympics is a perfect example where every country it's like rah-rah from your own perspective. It's not really written from a neutral perspective. And one of the times where we sort of took advantage of that from our own perspective, but also where we had to kind of ignore some of what our American copy was around the women's soccer semifinal game, where in the US they had completely ignored it. And I was talking to one of my peers there, and he said they covered it oh, this is a great thing, soccer is over, the game's over and the women are moving on to the gold. They had no idea that it was a huge controversy here. And it turned out to be the biggest or second biggest story of the games for us, not only from sort of a traffic perspective, but I mean like just in terms of like interest and what we were able to mine out of it, like the number of storylines we could pull out of that. And you can't do that if you're in California or New York. You need to understand what it is that people are saying, you know, here at home. Yeah. Any other questions?
That was great.
All right,
Thank you
thanks.
so much.